Coming up, let's visit with Indigenous artists. We're talking about their beginnings and what projects to expect. I'm Malia Chavez. Join us for these interviews from Indian Country Today.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Ku'watsi Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I'm Malia Chavez. On today's show, we're revisiting with some interviews from contemporary Indigenous artists. Bobby Wilson is a Dakota poet, visual artist, comedian, writer, and actor. From a young age, he has always loved making art. ICT editor Mark Trahant interviewed him, and here's a small piece of that interview.
Bobby Wilson is a visual artist and a poet, and making people laugh was just something every native in St. Paul, Minnesota could do. But when he co-founded the comedy troupe, the 1491s, he saw how far he could take him. The Dakota citizen now finds himself acting on and writing for 2 hit television shows, and he's here to talk about his journey. Welcome to the show, Bobby.
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
Excellent.
Wow, you look great. You look great. Look at you.
Well, take us on this journey. How do you go from artist to poet to television show?
Oh my God. Well, okay. How do I go from there to there to there? Oh, I don't know. How did it all happen? It was so crazy. Everything. I'm still reeling from 37 years of life on Earth. Well, I've always just loved art in general. I think when I was a kid, my idea of what art is was very binary. So, art meant that you draw stuff or paint things. And I did that for a really long time. As a graffiti artist in the Twin Cities, I painted on all of the stuff that those people came and built over our ancestors' bones. And then when I was 16, I was arrested and charged for $50,000 worth of graffiti damage, criminal damage to property, they call it. I was given 2 felonies for it and then put in a county boys home until I turned 18. And while I was there, I met my art mentors, Roger and Peyton, at Juxtaposition Arts, and they taught me how to actually be an artist for a living. They taught me not only how to paint murals, but how to invoice for murals. And they would always say, Roger, every time he'd pick me up or drop me off, he'd be like, you stacking chips? You stacking chips? Make sure you're stacking chips. You never know when that money's going to go away. Stack those chips. And so he instilled that in me. I did not stack chips because it's very expensive to live in Minnesota and to be homeless in Minnesota. Anyways, went from there, worked for them for about 9 years, painting murals, first as a student, then as a student teacher, then leading my own mural painting programs. And then I was fortunate enough to get support from the Indian community there in the Twin Cities where I grew up. And I got to do all sorts of stuff, organizing poetry shows and mural painting programs, things like that. And then in about 2010, I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico for this really crazy thing called the Santa Fe Indian Market. It's been going on for like 100 years or something like that. And there I met Ryan Redcorn and Sterling Harjo. And we became friends like right away. that first night, we just hung out all day, geeking about art. We went and saw Gary Farmer perform. Gary Farmer and the Troublemakers at the VFW there. And because it was so late, I just went back to their hotel with them, and we all cuddled up in the same bed. And the next morning, I was invited to like Redcorn's wedding, and we just be, because he's a psycho, he's crazy, he's a crazy person. He let this tatted up Dakota man just, sleep in the same bed with him, and then he was like, "Hey, why don't you come to my wedding?" So I did. And I went with my dear friend Dallas Goldtooth and Migizi Pensino. And when Redcorn and Sterling came up to Minnesota to show Sterling's film Barking Water at the Walker Art Center, the five of us met up and we made a video for YouTube called Wolfpack Auditions. And I didn't know much about YouTube at the time. It wasn't on everybody's phones. I didn't even have a touchscreen phone yet. And we really quickly became Indian famous. So like 1 million Indians watched our video, and I couldn't go to any res without somebody going like, "Hey," because they recognized the neck tattoo, the Wolfpack guy. And I had so much fun with it, like making folks laugh. And then like, it was just such a fun experience making that video that the art of comedy suddenly became something that I really wanted to pursue with all of my heart. And it's kind of what I made my whole life about since then. So me and my buddies, we toured around, we made a live comedy show. We went to like almost every res on Mother Earth, including the reserves up there in Canada. Yeah. It just had like an incredible time meeting all these different people. And it like flourished and grew, and now all of us are writing and acting on television shows, and it's insane, and I still can't believe it, but here we are.
That was writer and comedian Bobby Wilson. When we come back, multi-genre artist Frank Wan talks about playing music with a full orchestra. Sichangu Lakota hip-hop artist Frank Wan hosted and performed 2 original songs on the PBS series One Voice, The Songs We Share. We talked with him about performing hip-hop music with an orchestra.
Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to be here and honored to join you all today.
The program that you hosted was called American Roots. Tell us about it.
Well, it was like a dream come true for me, because I've always dreamt of performing with an orchestra ever since I was a little res kid, teaching myself to write songs in my bedroom, building a little home studio. So it was almost surreal for me, and it was very fast paced. I was the only artist that wasn't classically trained, so I was just coming from a much different world and much different way of performing music. But it was so fun to get outside of my comfort zone, and the orchestra also had to get outside of their comfort zone because they were playing hip-hop music and native flute music, which they've never done before. So where we met in the middle, I think it was a really cool space to perform in and to be able to share with the world.
What were those conversations like when you mentioned these different areas of music, and you have orchestra music, and you of course are a hip hop artist? How did those conversations go when you decided we want to do something together, but what does that look like?
Yes, well, honestly, a lot of the glory on that work should go to the conductor, Luke Frazier. He's the conductor of the American Pops Orchestra, and he was the person that kind of helped select artists for the show. So he reached out to me, and then my conversation started with him around, which pieces we wanted to do. And the funny thing is that the pieces he chose were pieces I created during the pandemic, because we were all quarantined at home and I couldn't travel and go on tour like I always did. I was doing shows from my home studio where I'm at now, but I also started creating these videos where I would show how I played each layer of the music, me playing the bass, playing the flute, the piano, doing the vocals, so you could kind of see how I was playing every single part of the music. And I think that's what drew him in to my compositions. And he's seen that, you know, I was a music producer and that my music had all these different layers that he could imagine through the orchestra. So he really resonated with the song that I wrote for my mother. And then we also had a conversation about a flute medley. So I took two of my original flute pieces and we put them together, and then he took that to the orchestra, and then they composed music to go around it.
That is so cool to think that they took your music and made something really beautiful out of it. This episode, of course, is about 30 minutes long, but I'd love for you to tell us about the production side of things. One, where was this filmed at? And two, how long did it take? Take us behind the scenes with that.
Yes, for sure. It was not my first time filming something, you know, for TV sort of based stuff, and it's a much different flow. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. You know, you got to be on set a lot, but when you're on, you got to be on and you got to be ready because you only got so much time in front of the camera. Because I was also one of 5 or 6 artists featured in the show, you know, so, and because of also COVID protocol, you know, we didn't really get to interact with each other a whole lot. You know, we kind of got to see each other practice from afar, but they were really also really safe and strict about their COVID precautions, which was great. We filmed at a theater in West Virginia, in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I think it was the Marinoff Theater was the name of the place. So the filming took 2 days. So the first day, I actually just filmed most of my host duties because I was the only featured artist that also hosted the show. So I kind of had to wear 2 hats at the same time and had to do a little bit, you know, kind of a second job, not just practice with the orchestra and perform, but also get in front of the camera, read a teleprompter, you know, make sure I did all the hosting duties as well. So the filming took 2 days. The first day I just did the hosting and I practiced with the orchestra, which was really interesting because I am not a classically trained musician, like I said, and you know, I don't even read music like people in an orchestra can. And so, you know, I was playing with them and just coming from the heart, and I knew the songs because they were my songs. So the first day of practicing, I think, was where we really ironed out how we were going to sound together, because it was the first time we had ever practiced together in person. There had been a build-up, and they had sent me sheet music and, you know, recordings of them playing what they were going to play with me so I could practice at home. So I had been preparing for, you know, weeks, but that was the first time we had actually been together and practiced together, was that first day. And so we really hashed everything out there. And the second day I everybody filmed their performance with the orchestra.
Your 2 performances were spectacular. One of them was a song called Like a Rock. Let's take a listen.
You always gave me what I needed, somehow always found the time. Single parent, it's apparent that you stayed up on your grind. I remember you would put me first. It was hard, but you said, son, it could be worse. And you were right. It's funny, looking back, the days were sunny. You kept me smiling even though we didn't have the money that other people did. Somehow you made it happen. I promised mama that I'm gonna do it when I'm rapping, cause you took me everywhere, in my cap, in my backpack. 20 years.
Frank, tell us, what was that experience like performing Like a Rock with an orchestra?
It was, like I said, a dream come true, and it was such an honor for me because that's a song that I wrote for my single mother as a thank you. I actually wrote that as a birthday present years ago when I was in college. I was a starving student, struggling artist. I didn't have any money. I was not getting paid for my art, and I couldn't buy her a gift. So I wrote her that song as a thank you, you know, for all the sacrifices she made for me. So to be able to give her that thank you with an entire orchestra playing the music was very emotional for me. And I think also filming that piece particularly, the orchestra really enjoyed because they were playing hip hop, but I think the film crew really enjoyed too because, you know, I got to interact and move around in the space, and we did different shots and different angles, which was something, you know, not a lot of the other artists did because they were very classically trained, you know, musicians and coming from a different space. So I'm really honored to share that song with the world, with the orchestra.
And when this special airs, will you be watching it with your mother?
Yes, for sure. I'm going to try to be home. If I can't be home, we're going to be watching digitally from afar, you know, as best as we can during times of pandemic. But everybody from my home and family and friends, I hope will be tuning in because, you know, those songs are very important to me and important to a lot of people in my life too.
Well, you're going to have to record her reaction because how special that is that you get to honor your mother in that way. I want to talk a little bit about filming this in a pandemic. You mentioned that there was certain safety protocols for months now. Well, actually, for over a year, we've heard from many Native leaders and community members who have said that safety is really important to them during the pandemic. What was that like for you to, say yes to this opportunity, but then to take it a step further to make sure that you were doing it in a safe way?
Yes, for sure. That's actually a great question because the pandemic is shifting all of our worlds almost weekly, it seems, and especially the world of live music, because we can't really have live shows like we used to. So that was actually the first time, or only the second time I stepped outside to perform music live since the pandemic really hit us. I had been doing stuff online until that point. So I was really cautious, but it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And they had a whole team on top of their COVID compliance. They had a bunch of protocols, which I appreciated. And they had different protocols. If you're on the mic, you needed to have certain things going on. And if you were just a musician and you didn't need to use your voice, you needed to remain masked. And like I said, they kind of kept the schedule really tight, and we didn't really get to interact closely as humans, which I understood, but I still got to see the other performances and watch the art and appreciate the art, which I really appreciated.
Up next, she's a Plains Cree model, actress, and advocate. Let's visit with Ashley Collingbull. Stay tuned. Plains Cree citizen Ashley Collingbull became the first Indigenous woman to win the title of Mrs. Universe in 2015. She talked with Mark Trahant about her latest projects.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting.
You're an extraordinarily busy person, and you're doing really high-profile work. Tell us about what you're working on now.
Well, I'm an ambassador for different organizations like Nike, so I do a lot of partnerships with them for RW & Co, Dress for Success, and a lot of different Indigenous initiatives. So I'm full-time doing that, but just recently, it's going to be coming out on October 21st on my birthday. I am on the second season of Tribal, which is a crime series based here in Canada. So I'm super pumped for that to come out.
What's your role in that going to be?
I can't really say what I am, but she is a model, kind of similar to what I'm doing in my real life, but a different ending.
Oh, that's exciting. I want to ask you about your collaboration with Bethany Yellowtail.
I love Bethany. Anytime she sends me any of her designs, I proudly wear them because not only are they Indigenous owned, and everything that she stands for is just so powerful. I feel that whenever I collaborate with her, whenever I've met her, I just feel empowered. It's just one of those designs and one of those things that women create where you feel like you can take your culture with you anywhere that you go. So upcoming, I'll be actually doing a partnership with her. So you'll have to stay tuned for a new collection.
Boy, we're getting a lot of stay tuned stuff today.
Yeah, I got a lot going on. And, it's quite surprising because during the pandemic, I thought things would really slow down for me, but they really picked up a lot. So I'm quite surprised, but I'm happy with that.
One of the, I really think, strengths of your career has been your work on some really serious issues at the same time you're engaged with entertainment and other industries. How do you come about that as a philosophy, and what's kind of been the industry's reaction?
Well, for me, it was always important to be outspoken and speak my truth. And especially if I'm in a position where I have a platform, where I'm considered an ambassador, where I can actually use my voice, it's important for me to use it as much as possible because so many of our voices are silenced. I speak about so many issues like murdered or missing Indigenous women, our children who are in the foster care system, the environment, politics. So I talk about a lot of things, but it's so important for me to use this time because that's the last thing I want is our voices to go silent. And with the industry that I'm in, whether it be modeling, pageantry, or acting, um, they're all happy that I use my voice and I use these opportunities to create more opportunities for other people as well. So whenever I got that chance to speak up, I use it.
One of those opportunities was a speech at Harvard. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
That was one of my first keynotes that I've ever done. I think I was 20 years old, and I never thought I would get the opportunity to be speaking at Harvard University, where I thought people are going to want to come here to listen to me. This is crazy. That really opened a lot of doors for me and really opened my eyes to, how impactful my story is. I didn't realize until that moment. And then I started speaking for other organizations. I even spoke at We Day, which was over 20,000 people. So it's crazy to be speaking in small groups and then also having this huge crowd. It's crazy because I went from being this little insecure girl in the reserve that never wanted to use my voice to now being this international motivational speaker. So for me, it's all about inspiring change and letting others know that you can do these things as well.
This is such an interesting moment in history because all of a sudden, particularly in entertainment and narrative, folks are really interested in Indigenous story. Is that something that is exciting to you, and how does it play into what you plan to do next?
I think it's about time that they are featuring, more Indigenous actors, more Indigenous storytelling, because our stories are so beautiful. They need to be told. People need to hear the truth. And it's really impactful. It's impactful because Indigenous representation is so important. As a young girl, I didn't really see many Indigenous models or actors. I only saw really a handful. And now you're able to see, such a diverse group of people that have so many talents. And it's wonderful that we're finally being acknowledged. And for me, this opens a lot of doors with representation and which jobs I can actually go for now, because, it used to be so limited and now things are being more inclusive. So I'm glad that I was able to open the door for someone else, be the first of something. But the most important thing is knowing that I won't be the last. It's always about opening that door of opportunity for someone else.
When you see that door open, what's been the most surprising one?
That it took so long to open that door, that it took so long to have this type of representation, and for me to be the first, that was a big step for me. Like, I was very honored, but to me, it's all about influencing the next generation and making sure that they have the same opportunities or they have more.
Speaking of influencing the next generation, one of the things that you do is talk to a lot of young people. What are kind of the questions they have, and what are the stories you want to tell them?
A lot of them ask me because I grew up in a really difficult situation where I lived through physical and sexual abuse, and I lived through poverty. And that's a very common story in Indian country. So a lot of youth have asked me, how did I overcome these obstacles of, these stereotypes, dealing with racism, dealing with the poverty at home, and also dealing with my self-confidence. A lot of people asked, how did you turn your life around? How did you finally find happiness? And to me, it's so important to share that, my culture saved my life. My culture kept me on the red road. My culture kept me traditional, and it kept me so valued in what I really believe in. And I feel that, my culture is something I keep with me everywhere that I go, and it gives me strength. And that's the one thing I always want to encourage the youth, is that our culture is our strength. Resiliency runs through our blood. And it's so important, no matter where you come from or what obstacles you have to overcome, you can truly become the person that you're meant to be if you have self-love for yourself and you live a fearless life. You never let fear stop you from chasing your dreams.
A fearless life. I like that. One of the stories that you've talked a lot about is the residential schools, and both the United States and Canada are having this conversation. What's important for people to know about the Canadian experience?
In Canada, I feel like a lot of people are finally opening their eyes and seeing the true reality of what has happened. For me, it's incredibly heartbreaking to hear about the numbers that are continuing to rise. My grandparents, my Mushum and Cookham, are residential school survivors. So it was really hard for my grandpa to hear what happened and what is happening. So the truth hurts, but it's so important for Canadians to be our allies by taking the time to educate themselves, learn about the true history, and also, take that time to look into other programs that are free, which there are so many in Canada, to teach you about our true history and ways you can give back, ways you can donate to Indigenous businesses, and not just speak up for us, but show up for us. The only way that Canada is going to grow together as a better country is everyone comes together and they have that understanding.
I want to talk to you about one of your other ambassador roles, and that's Nike and N7. Start with the headlines.
It's crazy. It's very rare to see Indigenous faces, especially in mainstream for big companies like Nike. So I've been partnering with Nike for quite a while now, and a lot of my initiatives started with working with at-risk youth in different communities. Now it is such a whirlwind to be able to see myself like front page Nike, big posters. I never would have thought that, but they have done so much to be able to give back to youth in my community and youth across Indigenous countries.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. For all the latest news and updates, visit us anytime at IndianCountryToday.com. I'm Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing
This is Indian Country Today.